Good morning, my brothers and sisters. The reading for this morning is found in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 to 28. It reads, Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, Send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, Yes, Lord, but even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith, let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. May God bless you.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you here this morning and to welcome those of you who are visiting with us today. We're glad that you're here with us. The story of Jesus' encounter with the Canaanite woman whose daughter was demon-possessed is one which is recorded by Matthew and Mark. And both writers add their own details to this incident. And by reading the two accounts, we can gain a more complete picture of what happened on this occasion. In Mark's account, we find Jesus is mentioned alone. There's no mention in Mark's account of the disciples being present, but we know from Matthew's account that they were there too. The incident took place in the region of Tyre and Sidon, and the cities of Tyre and Sidon were north of Galilee on the Mediterranean coast in the region of Phoenicia. Tyre and Sidon were both important seaports. The Phoenicians were a seafaring people who had developed trade with many parts of the Mediterranean region and even reached as far as this country, as archaeological evidence has shown. And they brought great wealth to the cities of Tyre and Sidon. Matthew and Mark both tell us that Jesus withdrew from Galilee to this region. And this is the only recorded incident of Jesus going outside of the boundaries of Palestine, apart from the time when, as a baby, he was taken to Egypt by Mary and Joseph. There are several reasons why Jesus might have withdrawn from Galilee at this time. He had recently been rejected in his hometown of Nazareth. His activities had come to the attention of Herod, who thought that Jesus was John the Baptist returned from the dead. And there was growing opposition to Jesus from the scribes and the Pharisees, who had been sent from Jerusalem to Galilee to observe the things that Jesus was doing and the things he was saying. So all of these situations could have led Jesus into a premature conflict with the religious authorities, something that he did not want to happen at this particular moment. Jesus knew that his hour had not yet come, and so he withdrew from Galilee in order to avoid the possibility of this early conflict. Also, Jesus needed a time for rest and preparation for the things that were to come. And so withdrawing from Galilee with his disciples would give him the time that he needed to instruct them away from the demands and the attention of the crowds there in Galilee. Mark, in his account of this, tells us that in the region of Tyre and Sidon, Jesus entered a house and would not have anyone know it, yet he could not be hid. Jesus didn't want people to know where he was. But even though he was seeking this time of solitude, Mark says he could not be hid. Even outside of Galilee, people know about Jesus and people are attracted to him. And wherever he goes, people try to find him. And whilst Jesus is staying in that region, he was approached by a woman who had heard of him. The woman is described by Matthew as a Canaanite woman from that region, whilst Mark describes her as a Greek, Syro-Phoenician by birth. And these would all be appropriate descriptions of the woman. Matthew calls her a Canaanite because the Canaanites were the original inhabitants of the land, and therefore by ancestry she is a Canaanite. Mark calls her a Greek because Phoenicia was a region influenced by the Greek language and the Greek culture introduced by Alexander the Great when he conquered that region. So we might say that culturally she was a Greek. And then Mark also calls her a Syro-Phoenician by birth. Syro-Phoenicia is the name of the geographical region where she was born. So all of these descriptions can be accurately applied to the woman, just as today we might apply various descriptions to ourselves. I was born in Cardiff, so I might say I was Welsh. My mother was English, so I might say I was English. Her mother, my grandmother was Irish, so I might say, well, I'm Irish as well. But I've lived in London most of my life, so I could say I'm a Londoner. I have a British passport, so I could say I'm British. And this is why you wonder why I'm so confused. But I'm sure all of you can think of ways that you could do that for yourself as well, to look at your origins and backgrounds. And so it's there's no conflict here when we read in Matthew that she's a Canaanite woman, and in Mark that she's a Greek and a Syro-Phoenician. But anyway, the woman came to Jesus because she had a daughter who was possessed by a demon. In Matthew's account, the woman describes her daughter as being severely possessed by a demon. And Mark says her little daughter was possessed by an unclean spirit. Demon possession was something that Jesus dealt with quite frequently during his ministry. And it's something that continues to puzzle us and raise questions in our own minds today. There seems to have been an outburst of demonic activity during the ministry of Jesus, and we have many cases recorded in which people were overcome and possessed by demons, these demons who were able to exercise some sort of control over them. And Jesus recognized the existence of these demons as separate or distinct beings, separate to the one who was possessed by the demon. Jesus spoke to them, he communicated with them, and he exercised control and authority over them. They obeyed him when he commanded them to come out of people. And so this woman has a daughter who's demon possessed, severely possessed, we're told. And she came to Jesus on behalf of her daughter. In Matthew chapter 15, verse 22, the woman's words are recorded as she approaches Jesus. "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely possessed by a demon." Mark says that the woman came and fell down at his feet, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. There are some things that we should notice about the way in which this woman approached Jesus. First of all, she fell down at his feet. And that suggests an attitude of adoration and worship, a recognition of the superiority of Jesus, an expression of her humility. To fall at the feet of Jesus would be the natural response to make when in his presence. The woman did it here. A leper on another occasion did it. Peter did it. The rich young ruler did it. And it suggests something about the personality and the presence of Jesus that people would do this. And if Jesus walked in here this morning, we would fall at his feet. And she addressed Jesus then as Son of David. "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David." And Son of David was one of the titles used by the Jews for the Messiah. The Messiah would be a descendant of King David, Israel's greatest king. So by using this title, the woman shows that she is at least familiar with the Jewish expectation of a coming Messiah, and that she felt that Jesus ought to be addressed in this way, Son of David. And then her approach to Jesus and her plea for mercy shows her love for her daughter. She wants what's best for her daughter. If Jesus heals her daughter, it will not only be an act of mercy for the daughter, but an act of mercy for the mother as well. Because the mother's well-being is tied up in the well-being of her daughter. Just as today parents with a sick child want their child to get well, and when the child gets well, the parents benefit from that and rejoice at that recovery. So this approach to Jesus then displays the woman's faith. It displays her respect for Jesus, her humility, and her submission to him. She recognized Jesus as the one who would be able to help her, and so she pleads for his help. Well, having made her approach and her plea, we find Jesus' initial response to the woman quite surprising, shocking even. In similar situations, we would expect Jesus to respond almost immediately and do something, heal the person and send them on their way. But on this occasion, having heard her desperate plea, Matthew tells us that Jesus did not answer her a word. He said nothing to her. He seems to ignore her. It's as if she's not even there. He's not interested in her, not interested in her need. And that's not how we would expect Jesus to react in these situations. But this unresponsiveness from Jesus does not deter the woman, because she persists in her plea. And such is her persistence that the disciples come to Jesus and they beg him to send her away. Send her away, for she is crying after us. In their view, she has now become a nuisance. So, well, best get rid of her. And I don't know whether they wanted Jesus to answer her plea so that she would then go away satisfied, or if they just wanted him to send her away without doing anything. This is how we often react when faced with someone who is persistently making demands upon us. We're not really interested in them or their needs. We just want to get rid of them. And so we might give them what they ask for, and then they'll go away and they'll leave us alone. The disciples' response here shows a lack of concern for the woman. Send her away. She's crying after us. Jesus' response still offers no hope for this woman. He says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This statement must have been heard by both the disciples and by the woman, and it seems designed to deter the woman further. She's a Gentile. Jesus says he's come only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Therefore, the woman would be excluded. So there's nothing I can do for you. You're not one of us. And Jesus' ministry was conducted primarily amongst the Jews. He was born a Jew. He lived and he worked amongst Jews. In Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 and 6, he told his disciples to go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This is your ministry. Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And Jesus' first priority was to the Jews, that they would be the first to benefit from his ministry. But ultimately, the Gentiles would also be included and they would receive the gospel. In Acts chapter 13 and verse 46, Paul said to a group of Jews there who rejected the gospel, he said it was necessary that the word of God should be spoken first to you. Since you thrust it from you and judge yourselves unworthy of eternal life, behold, we turn to the Gentiles. Okay, you've had first opportunity on this. Now we turn to the Gentiles. And in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, Paul says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for salvation to everyone who has faith, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. It's for everybody, for Jew and for Greek. So whilst Christ's ministry, whilst he was here on earth, began amongst the Jews, it would eventually extend to everyone, to Jews and Gentiles. And that was the commission that Jesus gave to his disciples after his resurrection, to go into all the world and preach the gospel. We see the beginnings of this in Jesus' ministry. He didn't even strictly apply the rule to himself that he had only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because we see him dealing with Samaritans and we see him dealing with Gentiles, such as the Roman centurion. But here he says to this woman, I've only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so Jesus' words to the woman seem designed to put her off, but she's still not deterred. And again, she comes and she kneels before Jesus saying, Lord, help me. A simple statement, Lord, help me, in which she expresses her utter dependency upon Jesus. She realizes that she has no right to claim anything from him, that she is dependent upon his graciousness towards her. And so all she can say is, Lord, help me. Well, surely Jesus is now going to answer her plea. But once again, we're surprised at what he says because it seems so unfavorable. It is not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Mark records his words as this: let the children first be fed, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Jesus is saying that it is not right for Gentiles to receive that which rightly belongs to the Jews. The Jews are the children and the Gentiles are the dogs. Once again, we're surprised by the words of Jesus. The term dog was a term of abuse used by the Jews of the Gentiles. So did Jesus mean to insult the woman when he spoke to her in this way? We're told that the word that Jesus used for dog is a word that means a little dog. And I noticed the version that Zichri read there, it was translated in that way, little dog. A little dog, a household pet. So Jesus is not using the word that's normally referred to the wild dogs that roam the streets, which would more likely be used if he intended to insult the woman. Also, we don't know how Jesus said this. The tone of voice and the expression on the face often indicates whether a statement is intended to be severe or insulting, or whether it's intended to be light-hearted. How did Jesus say this? What was the expression on his face when he said this? But however Jesus said these words, they do seem to indicate his apparent unwillingness to answer the woman's plea for help. And she might have concluded, well, I've been here, I've been pleading for so long, I've tried to get Jesus to help. Obviously, he doesn't want to help me. I might as well just go home. But she's not put off. The woman responds with a reply that shows her quickness of mind. Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. The woman accepts what Jesus has said about the dogs and the children, and she seizes that glimmer of hope that is implied in that statement. Well, I may be a dog to you Jews, but even dogs get to eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And so she remains optimistic. Don't deny the children their food. Yes, feed the children first. But even the dogs get to eat the leftovers. And it was this reply from the woman that then caused Jesus to testify to her faith. And he said, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." In Mark's account, his words are, "For this saying, you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter." It had seemed all along here that Jesus was putting obstacles in the way, that he didn't really want to help the woman. But her persistent faith was in the end recognized and rewarded as Jesus cleansed her daughter of the demon that had possessed her. and the healing was instant, and the healing happened at a distance. Jesus didn't have to go and be present with the girl in order to heal her. He simply told the woman that the demon had left her daughter, that she could go home. And when the woman returned home, it was just as Jesus had said, that she found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. That's what Mark tells us in chapter 7, verse 30. When we read this through this incident, we're surprised at the way in which Jesus treated the woman. Why did Jesus deal with the woman in this manner? Why did he seem so unwilling to help her? Some have suggested that Jesus never intended to answer the woman's plea, but he did so only when she revealed the depth of her faith. It seems more likely, though, that Jesus deliberately dealt with her in this manner so that her faith would be tested and it would be strengthened. That at the end of this, the woman had learned an important lesson about her own faith. She had learned just how strong her faith was. The delay in granting her request had served to test her and to strengthen her faith. And at the end of the day, the woman's faith was stronger because of the way in which Jesus had dealt with her. Her faith grew through this process. And we can't help but admire the woman and admire her faith. And we don't even know what her name was. That she came to Jesus in her time of need. She persevered when it seemed that her request was to be denied. She continued to plead, even when obstacles and discouragements were put in her way. She didn't know how to take no for an answer. And she was prepared to wait at the feet of Jesus until he had mercy on her. The example of this woman's faith provides us with some lessons for our own lives as well. That we too must realize that Jesus is the one who is able to help us. Go to him for help. He's the one we should turn to in our time of need. And we too must persevere in our faith as she did, even when we face the trials and the difficulties, even when the obstacles are thrown in our way, that we must not give up. And we too must wait at the feet of Jesus for his mercy. The writer to the Hebrews tells us to draw near to the throne of grace, that you may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Go there for mercy to find that help in time of need. Whilst Jesus' words provide a stern test of the woman's faith, the situation also provided some important lessons for Jesus' disciples. As the incident prepared them for their work amongst the Gentiles. No doubt the disciples were agreeing with Jesus when he said he had come only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And when he said it's not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs, perhaps Jesus was just reflecting the things that were going through their minds. This woman wasn't a Jew. She had no right to come to Jesus and ask for help. She's a nuisance. She should be sent away. The fact that Jesus did not send her away, but in the end rewarded her faith, would have shown to the disciples that Jesus cared just as much for the Gentiles as he cared for the Jews. And this was an important lesson for the disciples to learn, as they would soon have to take that gospel message out into the Gentile world. And it's a lesson for us as well, that there are no in-groups or out-groups. There are just people who need Jesus, people who need his grace and his love and his mercy. The meeting between Jesus and the Syro-Phoenician woman then is one that teaches us the importance of persistent faith. The woman couldn't claim any physical descent from Abraham, the father of the Jewish nation, but by her faith, she certainly showed that she was a true spiritual daughter of Abraham. And we too need to have that same kind of faith in Jesus, a persistent faith that will endure the trials, the disappointments, the tragedies of life, a faith that will not give up or fall apart when it's put to the test. Peter in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 7 to 9, tells his readers that they're suffering various trials, he says, so that the genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold, which though perishable is tested by fire, may redound to praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Without having seen him, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with unutterable and exalted joy. As the outcome of your faith, you obtain the salvation of your souls. The genuineness of our faith, it may be tested by the circumstances of life, but in the end, our persistent faith will lead to the salvation of our souls. And so may we be encouraged in our faith by this wonderful example of this wonderful woman and her persistent faith in Jesus.